Right guys, today we're going to do a GS430 3UZ-FE VVT-i into an IS200 plug and play with a manual gearbox. So let's get into it. Right, as I said, this is a GS430 3UZ-FE, specifically the 2000 to 2005 model that originally came with a 5-speed auto. It's going into an IS200, completely plug and play, and the customer's using a manual gearbox. So what we're going to do today is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through the layout of the harness, show him where everything plugs in and how it all connects. Then we're going to jump into the testing, which is made up of 2 parts, one with the ignition on and one with the engine actually running. But as you can see, this is an adapted harness, and what that means is we've taken an existing harness, we've completely stripped it down, cleaned everything, removed what needs removing, added what needs adding in to make it plug and play. So the first thing we're going to do, let's take a look at that process. I'll be back in a second. Right, you can see there, yeah, we started in, at the end of the video, you've got like a before and after shot, so you'll see what we received, obviously, but those photos show you the process where we've already cleaned it down, we strip everything off, we remove everything, we re-tape it up with all the nice new tape and everything, we add in all the stuff like the resin and the patch and do all these plugs, etc., add all the stuff in for the manual gearbox, remove all the auto gearbox stuff, etc., etc. So, as I said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the layout. So we're going to go through the harness and show you where everything connects and give you some information as we go along. So what we'll do now is we're going to start at the ECU box. But before I do that, I'm just going to cut to a photo because it is a bit messy here because the engine's high up and so on. I'm going to cut to a photo which will be repeated at the end, but I'll show you what it looks like when everything is inside the box nice and neat. Right, so there you go. So you can see once it's inside a box properly, and that is in the grommet location, etc., it looks very nice and everything is all nice and laid out really, really neatly. Okay, so first thing, as you can see, this is a 3UZ ECU, so it's the wedge-shaped one. And basically, this is an IS200 ECU box. So if you have an IS200 ECU box, one of these wedge-shaped ECUs are not going to fit directly into that ECU box. So you have 2 options. One, if you can find an IS200 ECU box, that bolts in. I think even a GS300 ECU box bolts in, but don't quote me on that. But the second option is you can basically lift up the ECU. You'll see you've got 4 screws there, and there's 2. And if you have a look through there, and there are your other 2. You can then pull out the PCB board, the actual ECU itself, and you can grind this lip down with an angle grinder. If you grind that lip down, and this will slide straight into an IS200 box. So you do have 2 options. You don't have to actually go buy anything, well, unless you don't have an angle grinder, in which case you got to go buy one of those. But yeah, you can either grind the lip off or get an IS200 box. Sorry. Right, moving on to the ECU. There's only 5 connectors, 3 over there and 2 over there. Again, all uniquely keyed, so you can't put the wrong one into the wrong place. So again, really, really nice and simple and straightforward to get that done. Then we move over to our little patch interface. So this interfaces with the 2 existing IS200 plugs that are left behind when you remove your 1G-FE from your IS200 engine, or if this is a IS300, where you remove your 2JZ. These 2 are always left behind what they call the body ECU plugs. Okay, then going down to here, we then have our body plugs that interface with the vehicle. This white one over here goes into the gray plug. Again, we've used the GS430 plugs where possible. And this black one goes into a black junction connector, which is what you'd have in your IS200. And this cream colored one goes into the blue one over there. Again, all 3 of these plugs are unique, so you can't plug them in the wrong place. You don't have to stress or fret about that at all. Just plug in where they actually plug in. If they plug in, then they're good to go. Now then, things you'll notice hanging around. This is a tacho converter. So basically what it does is it converts the 4-cylinder signal from the 3UZ ECU to a 6-cylinder signal that we need for the IS200. Now I do set these up, obviously when I do the harnesses here, but they are adjustable. So if you find that you are not getting an accurate signal or you don't feel that it's accurate, then please feel free. I think I do have a video where I show you how to adjust these, but basically all you got to do is pry this off. There's a little pot resistor in there, and then you can just change it left, just screw it left or right, and your signal on your dash will go up or down. So really super simple. Obviously you need some kind of OBD diagnostics in order to see what the actual RPM is based on the engine ECU to get an accurate figure from that. This is now what I call the brake switch relay. So on the bigger models like the IS300 or the GS430 and so on, they had a 4-wire brake switch. Now, unfortunately, the IS200 manual, which is the only one I know in the range, doesn't have that 4-wire brake switch. It only has a 2-wire brake switch, which is funny because the auto version of the IS200 also came with a 4-wire brake switch. So I have a feeling it's to do with cruise control. So any vehicle that had cruise control tends to have that 4-wire brake switch. Now then, what we need to do is replicate those signals, although you don't have cruise control on a manual ECU, but I need to replicate those signals, so we add a relay into the mix, and that takes care of the 4-wire brake switch that is not present on an IS200 manual. And obviously this could still be used in an IS200 auto. It's just that we don't want to limit people. If you had an IS200 auto originally, if we made you one without the relay, then you couldn't sell it to someone who had an IS200 manual. So of course we added to every single one, irrelevant of whether you had an IS200 auto or manual. And last on the list here is just 2 junction connectors there, and they can just be tucked down the side over there, like you saw in the photo that I showed you earlier. Okay, that's the ECU box, super simple. 5 ECU plugs, 2 from the body, 3 from over there. Tuck these in there, tuck this out the way, tuck the relay out the way, Bob's your uncle, done. Close the lid. All right, moving along. Grommet goes into the wedge U-shaped grommet holder over there. Rubber on the top, so when you put the lid on, it does seal it from water. Harness moves up along there, go to a piece of rubber over there, and then we end up at our first plastic section that keeps the harness all together. So, just to quickly check, this is mounted in 2 locations, here and here. Okay, really super simple. 10mm socket, those come off, and you screw it all down, keeps it in place. The first breakout you see over there is going to be injector 1 and coil 1. So, while we're here, the way this engine works is looking from the driver's position, which is the back. This is the left bank, and it has cylinder 1, 3, 5, and 7. That's the right bank, and it'll have cylinder 2, 4, 6, and 8. So right is even, left is odd. This can also be referred to as bank 1, and that can be referred to as bank 2. So yeah, there's 2 ways you can refer to it, but basically odd numbers, even numbers of cylinders there. Okay, right, so that's that. Injector 1, coil 1, really straightforward. Moving to the front here, the harness is going to come out here. First thing it's going to come to is the oil control valve for the VVT-i. So remember, these VVT-i systems are only on the inlet cams, not on the exhaust cams. The next generation engines like the UR and the GR, they actually had VVT-i on both cams, both exhaust and inlet, but these only have it on the inlet cam. Moves down a little bit, breaks out over here, and it goes to your TPS plug. So remember, this is a 3UZ 5-speed originally. So these have the throttle bodies with a 2-pin plug there for the motor and a 4-pin plug there for the throttle position sensor. Whereas the 6-speed ones had 1 6-pin plug over there. Still 6 wires, it's just where they're located makes the difference, okay? Right, moving that along there, you'll see there's a little mounting point. You can obviously keep it down there. If you've got a clip on there or a cable tie or something, you can keep it nice and tight there. Comes down to about here and breaks out and goes to our cam sensor for the front there, okay? Now, do bear in mind with a 3UZ VVT-i as well as a 1UZ VVT-i, you actually have 3 cam sensors. So as we go along, you'll see the other 2 are actually measuring the inlet cam. So this cam sensor over here actually has just a single tooth, and it doesn't change its position based on VVT-i. So the ECU can use this one along with the crank sensor to determine the position of the engine for sequential injection and sequential ignition firing, okay? Anyway, moves along there. You should see you've got a mounting point there and a mounting point there. Ignore my ones. They're just ones that I can easily get the wire in and out because I'm obviously changing these all the time. But as they come past through there, it's going to split into 3 sections. First of all is going to be your AC plug there. Now, the GS430 AC pump is perfectly fine to use. It doesn't have the solenoid at the back like an LS430. It should have just this plug on, and you plug this directly in. No dramas at all. The next one that pops out over there, you'll see I've actually run it how you're going to be running it, because this is an LS430 engine. So your oil filter housing is not going to be facing forwards like this. It's going to be facing backwards. So your oil pressure switch is not going to be here. It's actually going to be facing backwards like that. So this can come through this little hole over here, around the back there, and plug into the oil pressure switch. The other one that's going all the way through the hole over there, so it goes through there, down through there, and pops out over there, that is your crank sensor. So again, really nice and simple. Nothing really with the same plug, so you can't get it wrong. Just watch this video, and as you want to put the harness on, it'll be nice and easy to go through and plug everything in. Now, it is perfectly viable to push through these holes and get out the other side with the aircon pump in. I've done it numerous times, but I do have probably 12 to 13 years of experience of doing it, so it's a bit of an unfair advantage, but you definitely can do it. So you can get everything in with the aircon pump in place. Right, so now we've done that, let's pop over here and let's make our way around the engine. So again, plastic comes through an end here, little section without plastic, and then the next plastic section over there. And this one gets mounted in two places, which is here and here. So again, super simple, nothing too complicated there. Now this has three sections that break out over here, so let's go through those. So this first section over here is going to break out to injector 3 and coil 3, and it's also going to the cam sensor for the left bank for the VVT. So again, there are actually 3 teeth on the inlet cam that this is measuring. So the ECU is capable of determining the advance or retard of the cam that it's requesting is actually being done on the engine. So that's obviously what these ones are measuring. Moving along to that, the next one over here is going to be injector 5 and coil 5. And then lastly, your noise filter over there, which goes into a little gray plug over there. Okay, so they're usually on there. You might have some brackets on here for the cover that went on there. They can also be on there, which I think they are on the other side. But anyway, that's that. That's a noise filter. It's basically just a capacitor. It's to absorb all the noise from the injectors and coils entering into shielding cable like the cranks and the cam sensor wiring. Okay. Moving along to there, then we have the last section that breaks out, and that's going to go to injector 7 and coil 7. So you're noticing a bit of a theme here. Obviously, it's just injector coil, injector coil, injector coil. So the fact that they do it like this means you can't really get it in the wrong place. So theoretically, this would probably reach over to there, but then this wouldn't reach over to there. So you'd kind of work it out as you went along. But again, really nice, super simple. Okay. Right, moving along, back of the plastic over here, just bends, goes over there, and then we have this piece that travels along the back. 2 mounting positions on there, that one over there that you can see there, and that one over there you can see there. So again, just 2 bolts, 10mm socket, easy peasy, job done. Okay. Moving along the back here, we then have a little section that pops down there. A couple of things that come out here. Number one is one of your earth straps. Again, so this bolts down here with the M6 bolt. So again, 10mm. So if you've got a 10mm, you're going to be busy with it. So that is 10mm bolt there, M6 bolt, 10mm socket, whack that on, and then go from there. Because it's an aluminium cylinder head, what I do advise you guys to do is grab a bit of emery cloth or a wire brush on a drill and just clean that off before you put this on. Aluminium rust is notoriously bad, and it always happens. And then if you just clean that surface before you put that earth ring on, that's going to save you a lot of headaches going further down the line. Next up, popping up down here is going to be this, and it pops all the way down there to your Lambda plugs. This is bank 1 sensor 1, or left bank sensor 1. Now, super important, there's usually a metal shield here. Okay, that protects the connector from the exhaust, so please make sure that that metal shield is in place. Okay, if not, and this thing dangles around and hits on your exhaust, it's going to melt. The plus B circuit that powers up the ECU is also going to that sensor over there, so if that melts, and there's also a ground in there so it can short out, pop that, car's going to stop, you're going to be scratching your head wondering what the hell's going on. So please make sure that plate is in place there. Okay. Next up is going to be your gearbox harness. So again, nicely labeled, going off to a 4-pin DTM connector. So again, we have done that because the guys like to change their gearbox over time. And if you do need to change your gearbox, instead of having to mess around with any existing connectors, you can just unplug that, phone us up, and we'll make you a sub harness for any other gearbox that you want. Now, that does include BMW gearboxes, and the astute amongst you will notice that BMW gearboxes do not have a speed sensor, but you do not need to worry. You can actually get the speed from the ABS ECU in the IS200, which is the way that the auto IS200 and the IS300 gets their speed signals from the ABS ECU. So basically you just add one wire inside the vehicle and you can get speed from the ABS ECU. So even if you have a BMW gearbox, it's really not a problem at all. In this case, he's running a J160. So again, we can run all the wiring to there and over to the cluster, and the speed works as you expect it to. Okay. Now then, moving slightly along there, you're going to see we have this little plug over here, and that is what I call the sub-harness connector. So basically it goes to your starter solenoid underneath and your 2 knock sensors. So let's quickly take a look at what that looks like. So as you can see, there's the overall picture. So you can see you've got the starter solenoid at the back of the engine there. You've got the 2 knock sensors over there. All right. So you can see the harness goes down and it goes to the starter solenoid. That's a little black plug over there you see in the photo now. And then it moves over and it goes to knock 1 or KNKL or knock sensor for left bank. And then it goes to KNK2 or KNKR, basically knock sensor for the right bank. Now, what I want you to be aware of is the colors of the wires, okay? So just make sure you noted which color was which. If you need to go back, please go back. And you'll see that one of them is gray and one of them is black. But I did say in the beginning there, which one was knock left and which one was knock right. And you already know that from the back of the engine, knock left is this side and knock right is that side over there. Okay. Right, so that's that. Let's quickly pop around to the other side and let's start from the back over here. So again, plastic carries on over there. We have a section that pops out down here. I wonder if I can get you a better view, but there it is over there. Again, an earth strap over there. So M6 bolts, 10mm socket, tighten that down, give it a clean before you do that. Make sure it's nice and sparkly clean, because this is obviously one of only 2 earths that your entire engine harness has, and they're going into the back over here. Also coming out there is your pedal sub harness. So again, 6-pin DTM connector pops around over to there, and in this case the customer we are supplying it is using an IS220, IS250, IS350 pedal. I've got a video down below to show you why we use that particular pedal, so I'm not going to bore you with all that information. I'll have a link to a whole bunch of videos down in the description with a bunch of stuff that you guys can go and look through. Okay, right, we'll get to the end of the plastic over here. I'm just going to see if I can move around to get a better, closer stand. Right, so just out of the plastic here, you're going to have injector 8 and coil 8. Super simple. It's going to come along here, break out over here, and it's going to go to the ACIS plug. So this goes underneath to the ACIS vacuum solenoid valve. And then it goes to, obviously, injector 6, which is there, and igniter or coil 6, which is over there. Now, the ACIS system, I do have a video explaining exactly what that is, how that works. So again, I'm not going to bore you with all of that. We'll do a bit of testing on it because we've got this little valve at the back so we can see and make sure that that's closing after we start the car. But yeah, if you want to know more about the ACIS, look in the description. You'll see a video explaining exactly what it is. Okay. Right, so that's that 3 from over there. Then it comes along here and breaks out over here and goes to injector 4, coil 4, and it goes to the cam sensor for the right bank. So exactly the same as one on the opposite side. Again, 3 teeth on this cam. It's measuring it position-wise, so make sure that the ECU can tell what it's commanding from the oil control valve is actually being done on the cam in the physical engine. Okay. Also coming out there is your noise filter plug on this side. So again, nice, super simple, plugs into there. I think this one actually goes into a bracket at the back here, which is to do with the cover. So again, just make sure if you haven't got one of those that it might be on that bracket that you've taken off and put somewhere. Okay. Right, moving along, and before I do that, you'll see you've got a mounting point there and a mounting point there, so you can use P-clamps to hold this all nice together like that. But coming to the end over here, it breaks out and it goes to the coolant temperature sensor. So that's a 2-wire plug over there. You won't have this temperature sensor on your engine. You'll actually have just a blanking bolt, so don't get confused if you don't see this. This is, I've added this in. You should have just a blanking bolt there. But then it's also going to go to injector 2, coil 2, and the oil control valve for the right bank. It's then also going to go off down here to our throttle motor, which is those 2 wires over there. It also comes out here. It used to come out down here, but we've moved it up to there. It also comes here and it goes to the mass airflow sensor. So again, these are super important for the 3UZ. There are actually a few different types, so please make sure that you do get the correct one for your setup. This is actually for an LS430. You'll notice that the GS430 and the SC430, the plugs are actually angled at 45 degrees. Just make sure you get the correct one. If you're ever unsure, use Toyo DIY. Take your ECU, put the part number in, go to the air filter location or the air box location, and then you'll find that the mass airflow sensor is there, and it'll give you the part number from Toyota. And in this case, I've actually purchased a Denso version because I've used the Toyota part number in a Denso catalog to find an equivalent mass airflow sensor. This is obviously a lot cheaper than buying one from Toyota, and Denso is the one that makes the airflow meters anyway. So again, no loss in quality there at all. Okay, so that's that section all completed. It's going to run down along through here, and it's going to break out at the bottom over there into 3 sections. Okay, we've got the 3-pin plug for the alternator, so that goes straight in there. We've got the oil level. Now do bear in mind on the GS430 it's a front sump, not a mid/rear sump like on an LS430. So you will have an oil level sensor on the sump that'll plug into. And then lastly, we've got our Lambda sensor plug over here. Now, when it comes to these Lambda sensors, there is something to take into account. On the 1UZ VVT-i, this plug is actually long on the engine on the side, and it goes all the way to there. So on a 1UZ VVT-i, the left bank and the right bank Lambda sensors are exactly the same part number. On the 3UZ, they're not. The left bank on the other side there is a short plug, And the right bank, as you see here, is a long wire with this particular Lambda sensor. Now, just to be fun, Toyota did actually change the wiring in here. So you can't plug a short one into that. Or more than likely, what I've had guys try and do in the past is plug a long one on the other side. So instead of buying the two different Lambda sensors, they just bought two of these long ones and thought I'll just plug the other one on the other side. And if I need to have spares, I can just buy one and keep it in. No, unfortunately, they are wired differently. So you do need to get the correct one for the right bank and the correct one for the left bank. Okay. Right. So that is the entire engine harness. Hopefully that's really nice and simple. It is pretty easy to put on. Better if you're out the car, obviously. But again, just makes a U shape, goes around the engine like that. So ECU, boom, around the back, boom, and then to the front here. And that's basically it. Super simple. Right. What else do you need to wire in on this particular swap, which is obviously an IS200 plug and play? Two things that are majorly important is your main alternator cable. Okay, so again, this is not part of the engine harness, and that's perfectly normal because was never part of the 3UZ engine harness. But that's going to go from there. It's going to run underneath the subframe, and you can run it along the back of the subframe, okay? And it's going to come into your fuse box over here. Now, this fuse box, this is obviously a right-hand drive vehicle. If it's a left-hand drive vehicle, it'll be on the other side, but they're basically the inverse, okay? So that's where you mount your main power cable for your alternator. It's important to mount it there because you've got a 120 amp alternator fuse. So if anything happens to this cable as it runs underneath the subframe and goes up to the alternator, you're going to blow that fuse before that cable gets hot and sets on fire. Okay, so that's why I say super important to plug it into there. Okay, next up is going to be your main power starter. Okay, now that's the only cable that goes directly to your battery and doesn't go to any location that is fused. Okay, so straight from there to there. But obviously when the engine's in, and obviously right back and down, from there to there is a very short distance. So you're minimizing the possibility of it getting caught, broken, rubbing through things and so on. But do take your precautions when you are fitting it to make sure that nothing like that can happen. Also on your positive of your battery, you've got this cable over here, and that comes out of the bottom of the fuse box. It's not plugged in or bolted into the fuse box. It just sort of dangles out like that, and that goes in there. Okay, so that's kind of all the positive side of things. So that's number one. So you've got alternator positive, starter positive, fuse box positive. That's all your positives. Now the second one is your negatives. So this one you see over here is what you should have in your vehicle. It goes straight down under the battery, bolts to the chassis, and comes out the other side. And you can see it dangling there. Obviously, I don't use it because I've got these engines move around, so I've got their own dedicated earths on there, which is this big, thick black cable that you see over here. That's just going to the block over there. But you're going to do exactly the same thing. So it's going to go from the battery negative terminal, underneath, bolt to the chassis, underneath, boom, and then into the block. Okay, so that's the main thick earth cable. Straight, boom, boom, boom. You might want to lift this up and lift up the battery tray and have a look and see that earth point underneath there. It does collect water. They can get hella rusty. So it might be a good time to lift it up, give the surface a good clean, and then bolt it all back down again to make sure you've got a nice, decent earth to that. Toyotas do love to have proper earths. Okay, so earth cable goes from there to there. Now then, there are two other earths that I can recommend that you put on. Okay, now on your IS200, you had a earth cable running from the firewall here that went to this side of the engine. So retain that cable and then just put it onto there. You can either put it onto the M6 bolt there, or what I would normally do is use this, which is an M8 hole over there. Okay, you can bolt that from there directly to the firewall over there. That's number one. Number two, on your IS200, you had a little earth braid. So it's not like an insulated cable, it's just a braid that went from one of the gearbox bolts to the chassis leg. I would advise reinstalling that there. So that's going to give you three really good earths. This one is going to go to the block. That's going to keep the starter motor happy because the starter motor is bolted to the block. That one over there is going to go to the firewall, which is going to keep the engine harness happy because you've only got two earths for the engine harness, which is here, and they happen to be on the cylinder heads. Okay. Obviously, the VVT-Is have an MLS or metal lined sleeved head gasket, which does help as well, as opposed to the non-VVT-I, which have a composite gasket. But anyway, earth from there to there, and from the gearbox bolt to the chassis leg, which again will just help with the starter motor, which draws the most current in your vehicle. Okay. Right, so that's pretty much it. That's the entire layout. That's where everything goes. That's where everything plugs in. It is relatively straightforward. The harness kind of tells you where everything goes by the way it's positioned and where certain things come out of the harness or branch out from there. You then have your positives, which is your alternator, the one from the fuse box to your battery and for your starter motor. Then have your earth that goes from there, chassis, block, cylinder head, firewall, gearbox bolt, chassis leg. Boom, and that is it. Okay. Right, so let me get everything ready. Next up, we're going to jump into the testing, and that's going to be again with the ignition on and the engine running. So bear with me a second. See you guys soon. Right guys, so now we're back for the testing of the engine harness, and as I said, made up of two sections, one with the ignition on and one with the engine running. So let's quickly go through those tests that we're going to carry out, and then we'll jump into the testing with the ignition on. So first of all, as you can see at the top there, we've got ambient temperature. So because it's a plug and play, and obviously I'm using a standard 3UZ ECU, we'll be able to have the proper ambient temperature be sensed by the ECU and actually displayed on the cluster there. So it will go up and down depending on the outside temperature. Make sure your outside temperature is connected sensor, which is in the front bumper there. Next up, we're going to look at the check engine light, the charge light, and the oil pressure light. So that's all coming over to the cluster here. We're going to make sure we've got a check engine light. We're going to make sure we've got a battery light, which you can see over there, and the red oil light over there. So that's the ones that we are looking for to make sure they come up. And then when we start it, obviously we want them to see them go off as well. Okay. Then we're going to test the reverse, which basically means I'm going to go to our reverse connector over there. I'm just going to bridge the wires like that, which is what your gearbox does. And we should get the beep through the dash to make sure that that is working correctly. Then what we're going to do is we're going to test the speedo. So again, I've got my speedo plug over there. I've got my little device to output a test signal for us. Obviously, I plug the terminals directly into the plug to make sure that everything from the crimps there at the plug to the crimps of the DTM connector, that everything is connected properly and that we get the speed signal right to the cluster. So we're able to look at that as I do that. Okay. OBD2 test. Unfortunately, our little blue friend, the OBD2 machine, has given up the ghost after 6 years of loyal service. Now we've moved over to Toyota GTS. This is a paid subscription service. Again, I'm happy to do a video if you guys want to use this. I think it's pretty reasonable. I'm using a Tatrix Open Port 2 US OBD2 connected to USB, and I think you could pay €5 for a day, and you can come on here and have dealer level diagnostics on there. Everything up to €300 for a whole year, which is not really too bad if you think about it. I think most people spend more on their mobile phones than that over the year. So if you are a heavy user, really useful. Only €300 for the entire year. Again, all the stuff that you would get on TechStream, you're not missing out on anything there. Full sort of dealer level, and it's open to the general public. Okay. Right, so that's going to be fine. We're just going to make sure that connects. We'll see some live data on there, make sure everything is gravy. Then we're going to go and test the AC clutch. So I'm going to jump onto GTS. We are then going to output the AC magnetic clutch relay signal. We're going to hear the relay over there on the other side of the engine click. Super happy with that. As part of that as well, we're going to test the AC request. So again, the ECU has been remapped. Okay, so apart from the usual stuff like, making the throttle more responsive, adding a bit more power, mostly low down, not so much uptime. But we've also removed the secondary Lambda sensors. We've also changed all the MPX data inside the ECU. So in other words, you'll see we haven't got an MPX translator device on there because actually in the ECU, it has been changed as part of the remap to communicate with the IS200, IS300, or an Altezza. Okay. But anyway, back to what I was saying. AC request, I'm just going to press that button over there, the light will come on, and I'll be able to see on GTS that the AC signal has gone from off to on. We'll go turn it off, come back, and then it'll go from on to off. That's basically all that we want to do there, to make sure that the communication from the AC ECU to the engine ECU is working. All right. Now then, just a caveat, the AC system will work as long as everything is wired in and is gassed up correctly. These ECUs do take a pressure signal, okay? So if the gas is too low or too high, that'll stop the AC from working. So please make sure your AC system is gassed up. Make sure that all the sensors, like the pressure sensor, are connected and plumbed in correctly. Otherwise, your AC will not work. So it needs to be standard IS200 AC components to work. Otherwise, it won't work at all. Okay. And then lastly, brake switch. So again, we already went through the little relay that I have in there. So basically, I'm going to fake a brake switch signal from the thing by supplying the wire with 12 volts. We'll come over here. Stop light switch will be off. I'll go hit that button or provide it with 12 volts, come back, and you'll see stop light switch is now on. I'll go pull it out. It'll go back to off again, just to make sure that's working correctly. So that's all the test with the ignition on. And then we're going to do the test with the engine running. So starter circuit, again, we're trying to make sure the neutral start switch is bypassed in the vehicle. So once I turn the key and the engine cranks over, that test is complete. Super happy with that. The engine cranks over when I turn the key. ACIS, or acoustic control induction system. Once the engine is started, all we're going to basically do is make sure that this goes from here to here. And that's all we want to see. That tells us that the ACIS valve is working. So little hint for you guys. If you've got the engine out, and you've got the inlet manifold off to fit that harness underneath, that's a really good time to test the ACIS valve, okay? So just to help you out a little bit, on the plug there, the white is 12 volts and the blue with the white is ground. So grab yourself a battery, take this plug, supply 12 volts to the, in this case, the black wire, and a ground to the white wire, and you should hear that vacuum solenoid valve just make a clicking sound. It should be just click every time you apply power, like click, click, click. That's all you're looking for. If it doesn't do that, time to change it, because otherwise, if you get everything together and that doesn't go down, you've got to take the whole intake manifold off again and replace that vacuum solenoid valve. So rather do it when you've already got everything off. Test it, make sure it works, and put it all back together. Okay. Drive-by wire test, super simple. I'm just going to press the pedal and the engine should rev up. Really straightforward. Oil control valve test. So again, we're going to go over to GTS. I'm going to be able to test each idle oil control valve, so the left bank and then the right bank, or bank 1 and bank 2. It'll advance and retard the cams. The engine will sound really lumpy, and that's what we're looking for. We want the engine to sound really lumpy, and we know then that the oil control valves are working and they're wired correctly. Okay. Next up is going to be injectors and coils, and that's going to be super simple. All I'm basically going to do is go around each injector one by one and unplug it so you can hear the engine misfiring, and as I plug it in, it goes back to idling smooth. So it's just to make sure that everything is firing correctly and that all the cylinders are working, okay? So the reason I do the injectors and not the coils is because on the 3UZ it has a system whereby if it picks up a fault on the coil, it actually shuts the injector down. So if I unplugged each coil one by one, I'd end up just killing every single cylinder as I went along, and eventually I'd be only running on 2 cylinders, which wouldn't happen. All right, so that's why I only unplug the injectors for that one. Tacho. So again, we're just going to jump on the tacho. I'll probably give the engine a bit of a rev just so you can see it going up and down. So that's all gravy. Coolant temp. So before we come back to the engine running, what I am going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm at least sort of 40-45 degrees. So the needle is just slightly off there. Once we finish carrying out all the tests, that needle's going to go up so we can see the coolant temperature is working as it should do. And again, there's nothing you need to do. It's part of the remap, so it's sending the proper data via MPX to the cluster to make the coolant temperature work. And then lastly, we have got diagnostics. So again, what we want to do is make sure that we've got no codes. Again, because of the remap, we've got rid of all the automatic gearbox codes. We've got rid of all the secondary oxygen sensor codes. We've got rid of all the EVAP codes and all that type of jazz. So you don't have to worry about any of that type of stuff. So we should have 0 codes when we check the DTC or diagnostic trouble codes over there. Okay. Right, so that's all the testing we're going to be doing. So let's jump into the ignition part. And first of all, oh, I actually missed one out. Sorry, this is the immobilizer removal. So just bearing in mind, we've got our security light flashing. So again, I have removed the immobilizer, okay? But I have kept the security light flashing. So when people walk past the car and they take a sneak peek in, that security light will still flash. It just lets other people know that there's an immobilizer there, but there actually isn't. You could plug any key into the key barrel and it would start the car, okay? Good time to remember the central locking, what these buttons do, open and unlock the door, and the little alarm that goes wee, 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 that's got absolutely nothing to do with the immobilizer. The immobilizer is built into the ECU. You could literally have the central locking and the alarm going wee, 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 stick a key in. Now, again, I'm talking about a normal standard car with the correct key. You could force the door open, make the alarm run, stick the key in the barrel, start the car, and you could drive down the road with the alarm going wild, okay? They're not connected at all, completely separate. Okay, right, but anyway, so we're going to test the immobilizer removal, and basically the ECU has the ability to determine when a key's been placed in the ignition barrel, okay? Not when it turns to on or ACC or whatever, the second it gets put into the ignition barrel, okay? So if you just watch here, the second that I touch the key on there, you're going to see the security light will turn off. There you go. And if you listen very carefully, you actually hear the relay working. So basically what's happening is as soon as I insert the key, a wire gets grounded, goes to the engine ECU, turns on M-rail, which turns on the main relay, which then supplies plus B with 12 volts, which then energizes the antenna, which then reads the key, and then the ECU says everything is okay. Now this happens obviously very, very fast, and it happens the second you insert the key, okay? So if you've got a standard IS200, you should actually, if you've never noticed it before, just jam the key in and you'll see your security light goes off. You don't have to turn it on or anything like that, okay? Right, but anyway, let's go to put the ignition on. Okay, and let's move over to our ambient temperature over there. So there you go, a nice warm 15 degrees centigrade in here. So that is the ambient temperature working okay. And then we've got check engine light in the corner, we've got battery light, and we've got oil light. So again, when we do the actual running, when I start it up, you'll see all of those lights will go off, and that's what we're looking for, to make sure they are working correctly, okay? Let's just quickly bang that in there. Right, so that was there, all the lights there. So let's go in and do the reverse switch, okay? So I'm gonna replicate what your gearbox does, and I'm basically gonna take this little wire, and I'm gonna bridge the switch there. And you can hear that annoying beep, okay? So that is perfectly fine. That is exactly what we're looking for. That tells me that from that connector all the way to the inside of the car, the reverse switch is fine. So as long as your gearbox does what I've just done there, which is what it should do, is close the switch, your reverse lights and everything will come on, okay? Next up is gonna be speedo. So let's jump into that. So first of all, I gotta put this into test mode. So do bear with me a second, because obviously it's not the easiest thing to do single-handedly. Right, but there we go. Okay, so I'm in test mode with my little tester there. I'm going to get both things in the shot for you. Come on. There you go. So as soon as I give it a signal, you see the speedo is working there. Fantastic. Okay. Right, so little hint for you guys. If you obviously get everything plugged in, bish bash bosh, you find you've got no speedo. Quick way to test what could be causing the problem is one of two things. Basically, you can get your friend to jump in the car, put the ignition on. You can jump under the car with axle stands, not a trolley jack. Take the speed sensor out of the back of the gearbox, tape it to a drill and just spin it, okay? If your friend with the ignition on sees the speedo going up as you spin in the drill, then you know the speed sensor is fine and the wiring from the speed sensor to the car is absolutely fine, okay? So therefore, the problem is then inside the gearbox. If you do that and you get no speed on the dash, then you know one of two things. Either the speed sensor is fault, or the wire could have got crushed on top of the gearbox or something if you left it on when you were taking it in and out and in and out and in and out. So just take a good look at that before you move on to there. But then it shouldn't be a problem with the actual gearbox itself. Okay, so OBD2 test. Let's take a quick look over here. You'll see we've got it's got GS430 UZS3FE. So that's exactly what we wanted to see. 0 RPM, 51 degrees. AC signal off, stoplight switch off, and second on. So obviously, as part of the remap, we need to wire second to 12 volts. So that's why I have it on there, just to make sure that that is correct. So OBD2 machine is working just fine. So let's move over and test the AC clutch. So again, I'm going to go over to GTS. We're going to pop into active test. AC magnetic clutch relay. So again, hopefully you read there. It's just basically going to turn on the output from the ECU to turn on the AC magnetic clutch. So I'm going to keep quiet now. And I'm going to move the camera to over there because that's where the relay is, right next to the ECU box. Right, fantastic. Okay, super happy with that. That means everything is wired correctly. The ECU is able to turn the AC magnetic clutch relay on and off when it so desires. Okay, so that's the AC clutch. Let's move into the AC request. So we'll go back to our data list, get our squashed down amount of information because K-line communication is so slow. Right, so at the moment we've got AC signal is off. We're going to pop over here, hit the AC button, and you'll see AC signal is now on. Pop that off over there. AC signal is off. Fantastic. So I know the communication between the AC and the engine ECU is intact. So as long as the pressure is okay, and there is a wire going to the ECU to test the pressure switch, as long as that's okay, your AC will work. Also, because it's part of the remap process, when you press the AC button, it will actually pick up the idle. So just bear that in mind. I might just do that when I do the running, if I remember to do it, but I'll press the AC button, you actually see the idle will come up as I do that as well. Right, brake switch. So at the moment, stoplight switch is off. So let's go and fake someone pressing the brake switch. So I'm just gonna take that wire. Oh, can you hear the relay click in? Pop over here and we should see brake light switch is now on. Pop back over to there, let's pull that wire out. Here the relay click off again and stop light switch is off. Fantastic, so that's exactly what we wanted to see there. Okay, right, so that's everything tested with the ignition on over there. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to come back in a second and we're going to do the testing with the engine running. I might go straight into it because you can see our coolant temperature is just above cold there. So it should be enough room that if I start it up, it should go up a little bit from there. But anyway, I'm going to get ready. Back in a second. See you guys soon. All right, guys, let's jump back into testing the engine with it running. So again, as I've done before, we're just going to go to the key. We're going to crank it over and we're going to run through all other things like the ACIS, the drive-by-wire, oil control valve, injectors, coils, tacho, coolant temp, and diagnostics. Okay, so again, to test the starter circuit, let's make sure that when I crank it, the key turns over. Super happy with that. So that's the starter circuit. Let's go look at the ACIS. So that has gone down, so we're super happy with that. Drive-by-wire test. Oil control valve test now then. Okay, so let's go into active test. VVT-i control bank 1. API control bank 2. Okay, so that's that done. Right, so let's go back to data list and let's go over to our injectors and coils. So we'll start on this side over here. So let's do number 8, number 6, number 4, number 2. So that is number 2 there. Let's go over to the other side and let's do number 7. Let's do number 5. Let's do number 3, and let's do number 1. It's always a difficult one. Okay. Let's do that again. The other one pulled. Okay, fantastic. All right. So that's all the injectors and coils done. Let's take a look at our tacho. See, that's all there. That's all cool. Also check engine light, battery light, oil light, all gone out. Super happy with that. Coolant temperature. Okay, so that's gone up dramatically. So you can see it was just above cold and it has started to move its way up. While I'm here, let me just show you that over there. Fantastic, okay. Right, so that's that. I'm going to quickly take off the fuel pump, let it drain out. Sorry, it says turn the ignition off and it's going, oh, I've lost connection, etc. Right, so you can see we had no check engine light on the whole time it was running, so that's absolutely gravy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to diagnostic trouble codes here. And there you go. We've got absolutely no codes whatsoever, which is exactly what we wanted to see. So the remap has done its job. It's removed all the automatic gearbox codes. It's removed secondary Lambda codes. It's removed everything. So if you get a check engine light on your dash, there is a problem that does need resolving. Okay, so again, you can plug in a diagnostic GTS or one of your Bluetooth or anything like that at all. Plug it all in, get the code, go from there and see what's giving you your issue with the check engine light on. Okay, now that's not the only thing that you can do with the diagnostics. So if you take a look at your vehicle and you look at the OBD2 port, so remember, I'm just connecting to the OBD2 port that's inside the car. Nothing special, we haven't added anything in like that. It's all wired in as it is factory. Okay, so in there, you can bridge pin 13 and 4, which I think are directly above each other. Okay, that's going to put it into diagnostic mode. All right. Also, if your IS200 is prior to 2001, you'll actually have this diagnosis port on the front of your engine on the fuse box there. And if you take a look in here, there are very few wires in here, but you can bridge E1, which is that top one over there, and TC, which is that one in the middle over there. So you see it goes boom, 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 that one in the middle and that top one there. That'll put into diagnostic mode, and there's not really much that you can do. These don't respond to things like, you know, flashing check engine light. They're too new for that. But what it will do is it will lock the timing at 10 degrees. So that can be incredibly useful, okay? So if you have a look down here, you'll see I've actually used some Tipex or correction fluid, whatever you want to call it. I've made the little crank mark there, really nice and white, and you've got 0, 5, 10, and 15 degrees. So if you think your cam has missed a tooth or something like that, or that your timing is slightly out, by all means, bridge it there, bridge it in your OBD2 port, grab yourself a timing light. My timing light actually works with the clamp just wrapped around the wires, okay? Not all of them do, but mine does. And you can check the timing, make sure it's at 10 degrees. All right, but do bear in mind that if you do that, to check that, to make sure everything is all good, make sure you remove that wire, because if you lock the timing at 10 degrees, you're gonna have almost no power. Okay, so as per usual, I've got a bunch of links down at the bottom with a bunch of videos that I've done for everything like the ACIS, throttle bodies, pedals, a whole bunch of stuff like that. So if there's a lot of information that you want to know about, please look down in the description. I've given a little heading to the video that I've done there, so you can go down, take a look at those as well, learn something about the whole setup when it goes from there. Okay, right, but that is everything that we need to do today. I'm super happy with everything, so we need to get this off and get it over to the customer so he can get in his car and he can get rock and rolling. Okay, but if you have any questions, please feel free to comment down below. Happy to answer them as soon as I can. If you do get in touch with us, you can get in touch with us through Facebook or email us at info@phoenixninjamanagement.com. If you get in touch with us now, I'm going to send you a link to a video that we've done the other day. It's not a public video, but it's for anybody that has inquiries. I go through the sort of information that we require from your side in order to get a quote done for you guys. So just a little helpful video so that obviously we can get the information straight from the get-go of everything that we need. So again, just something to help you guys out. Okay. Right. So if you stick around, get a couple of photos now of what we received and what it looks like in the end when we're all done. And again, thanks for watching, guys. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, put your hand to the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light, ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but